I'm beating the main series Pokemon games with every species, collecting data, comparing performances, and building an accurate picture of how everything fits together is what I do here. But sometimes comparing species isn't enough. Today we need to get more specific, because Shaymin has two different forms, land and sky. In this video I'm going to be doing a solo playthrough of both to determine which one is better in this format. Land has balanced stats across the board with 100 in everything, whereas Sky is a fast special attacker, which at first seems amazing, but its additional typing increases the severity of its weaknesses, especially when considering ice-type moves. I've had problems in the past against Candice when using Torterra, which was doubly weak to ice moves, so I think there is potential for land to come out on top. Rules for these challenges are in the description. Now I'm ready for these journeys to begin. The first mechanic that we need to cover is how Shaymin changes its forms. There's a key item called the Gracidia. I think I have that pronunciation right. I looked it up online but couldn't really find much on it. Anyway, when you use this item, it will change the land form Shaymin into sky form. There isn't an active way to reverse this transformation. Instead, you need to wait until nighttime, where sky form will turn back into land form, or have Shaymin become frozen during a battle. Because of the time of day requirements, this is the first time that I actually had to be aware of the fact that my emulator was usually starting the clock at 12 AM midnight. In this case, I'm going to start it a little bit earlier into the morning, so that by the time I reach Floroma Town, when I receive the key item, the clock will be set during the day and my form won't revert throughout this playthrough. So yes, I'm going to be starting both runs with Shaymin Land and then naturally changing its form throughout the playthrough as was intended. That said, I should mention the fact that some Shaymin cannot actually change their forms. If yours doesn't have the Fateful Encounter flag set inside its internal data, then it can never change forms. The only way to obtain a Shaymin with this flag is through an event distribution. I assume this is an anti-cheating measure so that players couldn't just hack Shaymin into the game and then transform it into its sky form. But even then, there are reasons that you would want to keep this thing in its original form. Number one, it's really cute. It has balanced stats and it's a mono grass type, so it doesn't have any dual weaknesses. Now, its move pool also subtly changes. So Shaymin Land starts with only growth, meaning I have to lose the battle against the rival at the beginning of the game, which is quite frustrating. That said, it has a medium slow growth rate like most mythical Pokemon. This allows it to level up very quickly in the early game, getting to level 10 where it learns Magical Leaf. This move is special and has a base power of 60, plus it bypasses accuracy checks. It's essentially just grass type Swift. At level 19 it learns Leech Seed, 28 Synthesis, 37 Sweet Scent, pretty useless in a solo challenge, 46 Natural Gift, which is a really unique move but also quite useless, Worry Seed at 55, again useless, Aromatherapy at 64, which it's gonna have a niche use, hold on for that one, and finally at level 73 it gets a better attacking move, Energy Ball, which has a base power of 80. Beyond that, it gets Sweet Kiss and Healing Wish, and finally Seed Flare, which is an awesome name for a move, but it learns this all the way at level 100. I'll definitely have beaten the game by that point. Through TM and Tutor, Shaymin doesn't get access to very much coverage. Your eyes will be drawn to moves like Psychic, Earth Power, Mud Slap, and Zen Headbutt. But there are some restrictions with these moves. Psychic is only available after you get Rock Climb or by purchase through the game corner, and it costs a lot of coins. Earth Power is only available in the post game, so I won't have access to it today. Mud Slap is not very good, and Zen Headbutt is physical, which is kind of okay for land form because it can attack with both physical and special moves due to its balanced stats. And there might be an advantage of running a physical Shaymin because it does get access to the TM for Swords Dance. I did consider running the set Bullet Seed, Return, and Zed Headbutt as a physical attacker with Swords Dance for setup, but we'll have to wait until later into the playthrough to see if that's the choice I end up making. For now, let's talk about the early game. I don't fight all the optional trainers, skipping most of them to save time, because I know that I'm going to be very good against Rourke's Pokemon, but I figured inside his gym that battling the two optionals here made sense just for a little bit of fast experience. This brings Shaymin up to level 13 over a damage rounding threshold, and now I'm ready for my first gym battle. Wait, before that I should do a quick review of Shaymin's Gen 4 sprites. I sometimes forget this important segment in my videos. To be fair, it is less important after Generation 1 because starting in Generation 2, the sprites are always at very least coherent. Land's front and back sprites are okay, cute, but nothing special. But its back sprite is where things get truly brilliant, like the sponsor of today's video. If you're curious about math, data analysis, programming, and AI on Brilliant, you can learn about them through thousands of lessons. I love how interactive they all are. It makes learning effective, letting you quickly internalize new skills. Brilliant's lessons let you build problem-solving skills like this problem Probability series, it's really helped me have a deeper understanding of many of the mechanics in Pokemon. Brilliant also helps you develop a powerful daily learning habit, and it's a big reason why I believe in their platform, because daily incremental learning has helped me learn programming over the past 2 years. To highlight some of the content on Brilliant, the introduction to probability, predicting with probability, and exploring data visually are great for those of you that are like me, having ambitions of becoming a Pokemon master. To try everything Brilliant has to offer for free for a full 30 days, visit brilliant.org/scotsthoughts, or click on the link in the description of this video. You'll also get 20% off an annual premium subscription. Now here's the reveal, Shaymin Sky's Brilliant back sprite. It's great, isn't it? Now let's get back to the run and face Rourke. Rourke starts with a Geodude. It's really slow. I can just use Magical Leaf and easily one-shot it because it has trash special defense. And the same is true for all of his Pokemon. Surprisingly, his Onix, which is next, has more special defense than the Cranidos, which is his ace. I never realized this. I think it's because Cranidos is a mono rock type, meaning it takes only 2 times damage from my grass type attack, but still Shaymin just does enough damage, and with that Rourke is defeated. That's a first split of 11 minutes and 17 seconds. Now you will notice some discrepancies between the Sky and Land playthrough as I go through and expose this data. I did play 2 completely unique playthroughs, but in all my challenges my Pokemon have the same stats, in this case perfect IVs across the board and a hardy nature to ensure a fair comparison. If you're worried about this early game offset, you might be curious which run I played first. I played Sky first and then I played Land second. Because my current tier list in Platinum features only my first playthroughs with a Pokemon, I had to decide which one I wanted to rank there. In this case I felt that Shaymin Sky was the more complete experience, so I decided to play it first. That said, in both playthroughs, while there is small time differences in the early game, by the time I reach Floroma Town and the runs diverge, the discrepancy has completely gone away. Before that though, there's some small details I want to mention. I have recently learned that buying 1 escape rope in Orberg City is advantageous for later on. Then I catch myself a Psyduck and I head north towards Floroma City. Now here, when I'm healing my Pokemon, you'll notice that the clock hits 15 minutes and 20 seconds. This happens for both playthroughs in the exact same building, so now the runs are synced up and we can actually diverge into the 2 different forms. Talking to this lady outside of the Pokemon Center, I can get the Gracidia and change Shaymin Land into Sky. Now its base stats are 100 HP, 103 attack, 75 defense and special defense, 127 speed, and 120 special attack. These numbers can sometimes feel like they don't mean anything if you don't have a point of reference, so I've programmed my overlay to be able to display the average stats from Generation 4 as well as the median stats, so that we can do comparisons and see how Shaymin stacks up. Since I know a lot of you are audio listeners, I'll read them out now. 67 HP, 73 attack, 70 defense, 66 speed, 68 special attack, and 69 special defense. With this information, we can see that Shaymin's defenses, which are its lowest stats, are still above the average. Its speed is roughly 1.9 times the average, and its special attack is 1.75 times the average. But sometimes using medians is better than averages because it excludes some of the outlying data, like Magikarp or Mewtwo for example. If we calculate the median for every stat, we notice an interesting trend. HP, defense, speed, special attack, and special defense all are 65, with attack being 70. It seems like Game Freak was designing the games around these median stat distributions with slight emphasis on attack, and that really has been the case since Generation 1. In the early game, everything is a physical attacker except your starter. Now that we have more context for its stats, let's talk about its ability, which does change with form. Now with Shaymin Sky, it has the ability Serene Grace, which doubles moves' chances for secondary effects to trigger. And this is where I want to draw your attention to the move pool differences between Shaymin Land and Sky. The only thing that changes is Aromatherapy at level 64 converts to Air Slash, which is a special move that has 75 base power and 95% accuracy. And it has a secondary effect, which is inflicting a flinch 30% of the time. And yes, Serene Grace doubles this, so when I outspeed an opponent and I don't one-shot them, Shaymin using Air Slash will have a 60% chance to flinch. Just so that everyone's aware, if I use the King's Rock, this does increase the chance to flinch in Generation 4. Starting in Generation 5, the King's Rock no longer grants flinch bonuses to moves that can already flinch the opponent. Notably though, in Generation 3 and 4, Serene Grace does not affect the King's Rock, so if I equipped it, my flinch chance would go from 60 to 70. But while playing this playthrough, I figured that 60% chance to flinch was more than enough. Okay, so Commander Mars is next. Early on into the game, I gave Shaymin a return because it has a high base friendship of 100, meaning this move already has a decent base power of 58. At the start of the battle, I thought I could take my time with growth, holding a Pecha Berry, countering Zubat's Toxic. After the flying type misses its status move on the first turn, I decided to knock it out, and it's really good I did because it takes me 2 turns, and I am hit with the status move using my berry in the process. But +1 to my special attack is really going to help against the Purugly. It goes for Fake Out, which does chip damage only, and then my Magical Leaf inflicts massive damage, taking it to red health. It heals a little bit with an Oran Berry, uses Scratch, doesn't do much, and I knock out her ace. This levels Shaymin up to 19, and it learns Leech Seed, but I don't think this move is going to be particularly useful. After all, once I make it through the forest, Gardenia is next, and she's a grass type specialist. However, before I do that, I have to equip a Cherry Berry and then do this double battle with the Pachirisu person. She's really annoying in some cases where she paralyzes your Pokemon, so I'm just focusing her electric type down and then finishing off Bugcatcher Jack's Pokemon. She doesn't cause issues. With that, I exit the forest and head into the gym to face the second major battle of the run. First is Turtwig, and normally this is not a good thing because it loves to set up Reflect and Sunny Day for the remaining Pokemon, and then things get scary when they set up Leech Seed and Stun Spore, really messing with you. But in this case, the Turtwig is awful against me because I have the Flying type, I resist all of its attacks, and I can set up with Growth with Impunity all the way to +6. With a special stat of 284, I don't think it matters if her Pokemon resist my attacks. Magical Leaf one-shots her lead, and then she sends in Roserade, which has a double resistance to my grass type attack. Still, I do almost half. She tries Stun Spore but misses. On the second turn, it does inflict the status, but I have a Cherry Berry, and because she ate her Citrus Berry, I'm able to attack one more time without her using a Super Potion and knock out her ace. All that's left is Cherim, but it's really not that good, and since it only has a single resistance, I one-shot with Magical Leaf, earning myself the second badge. Because I can now use Cut outside of battle, I backtrack into the forest, cut down a tree, grab an Ether, and head into the old chateau where I can pick up my first rare candy. Also in here is the TM for Substitute, which I'm going to teach to Shaymin right away in the place of Leech Seed, because it's very helpful against Fantina, who's coming up next. Well, not immediately next, because I have to face Commander Jupiter before proceeding with the playthrough. My strategy here was to set up Substitute, then use Growth to set up my special attack and hopefully make it past the Skuntank, but the Zubat is actually dealing decent damage with Wing Attack, which is super effective. Return just barely doesn't one-shot it, and it does more damage, taking me to half health before her ace comes in. With only +1, I deal less than half, and because of the damage Night Slash is dealing, there's no way for me to win. So that's Shaymin's first reset. I tried again with the Substitute strategy, but this really isn't working out against the Zubat. Eventually I just resorted to setting up Growth while getting hit by Wing Attack, but this doesn't work either because I still can't one-shot the Skuntank. The fact that Shaymin Skylearns Air Slash at level 64 is really holding it back right now. I don't have enough damage with Return to rely on it. My special move is resisted by the Poison Dark type, and even if I spam Return, which is supposed to do more damage, it still isn't going to be enough. So how do I make it through this fight? Well, the answer is I get a critical hit against the Skuntank, dealing massive damage to it on the first turn, and because I'm on high health, it misses a Poison Gas instead of attacking. This lets me take it to orange health. It then starts attacking, but this is a little bit too late. As a result, my next hit brings it to a sliver of health. I survive one more Night Slash, and as a result, Skuntank goes down, and I win because of a lucky crit. Remember back to when I mentioned buying one escape rope? This is because I like to explore Wayward Cave to pick up an additional rare candy, and in some cases to pick up Earthquake. But unfortunately that move is not useful today even with Shaymin Land. Picking up this item early on allows me to quickly escape this location, which is convenient, making the playthrough more smooth. There's nothing really to mention on the next route, so I'm going to head into Hearthome City next. Here I pick up the Shell Bell, which is an item I'm starting to second guess picking up just because it wastes time, and I don't think it's usually that relevant. But in this case, it's actually going to be helpful for me in the near future. I equip it, head into the gym, complete this awesome puzzle, and now it's time for Fantina. This is one of the least interesting fights in Pokemon Platinum solo runs. I have really figured it out as of late. The Duskull at the beginning of the battle, the Dusclops at the beginning of the battle is really slow and basically useless. It loves spamming Will-O-Wisp, so if you set up and block all of its status moves, it's never going to break your defenses, and then you can set up for free. Just to ensure I have the best chances of one-shotting all of her Pokemon, I set up to +6. I might as well just take my time here. I knock out her lead, move on to the Haunter, which I also one-shot, and that leads to her Misdreavus. I have lost my defense by this point due to a future sight, but it doesn't really matter. I re-established Substitute, playing overly safe. This blocks Confuse Ray, but it didn't even matter because Magical Leaf has enough damage to one-shot. Okay, with Fantina defeated, Shaymin Sky has a time of 35 minutes and 52 seconds. Let's go back now to Floroma Town, around 15 minutes and 20 seconds, and see how Shaymin Land does with this section of the game. There is a minor time savings because I don't have to pick up the flower and change my form. This is just dialogue, so it won't really matter in the grand scheme of things. I was a little bit worried here again because of the poison interaction on the Zubat, and while it does poison Shaymin, I did go for 1 growth, so Magical Leaf is doing enough damage to 2-shot the Purugly. Shaymin Sky's special attack stat isn't so significantly better that I was able to knock out her lead in less turns, so 100 special attack is enough, and I just barely squeezed through with 11 hit points remaining. Here's the fight against the Pachirisu person. Nothing goes wrong for Shaymin Land, so we still have an accurate comparison. I played the Gardenia fight exactly the same, setting up on the Turtwig and then sweeping through her Pokemon. I'm not really noticing it in this fight, but Shaymin's higher defenses in land form are going to be a major asset just around the corner. Roserade takes longer to knock out because my special attack being slightly lower means it's just barely surviving my hits, allowing Gardenia the chance to heal. This is a small time bleed, but Shaymin Land is going to make up for it against Commander Jupiter. Like Shaymin Sky, Land doesn't have enough defense for Substitute to survive 2 wing attacks from Zubat, but it does take less damage from Skuntank's Night Slash, and I noticed that during the first battle. What this means is if I just attack with Return, which ends up being the best strategy for Shaymin Land, I'm going to do enough damage to knock out the Zubat in 2 hits, and then the Skuntank in 4. This gives me a fairly consistent path to victory. The only thing that could go wrong here is if the Skuntank got a critical hit, but it doesn't in this case, and Shaymin Land pulls through with only a single reset. During the Ghost Gym puzzle, I run into some trainers, and I'm going to use these as an example of where Shaymin Land struggles. Because it's more defensive, random Pokemon around the region are just going to take a little bit more time to defeat, meaning it loses a couple seconds here and there with longer battles. But Fantina is another example of where the higher defense stats are still a bonus. My Substitute this time is not broken by the time I knock out her Haunter, so the small amount of time bleed that I had against Gardenia is equalized out here because I don't need to set it up again, one-shotting the Mismagius with Magical Leaf. Its lower special attack was not actually a liability in this case. Despite the advantages, Shaymin Land is bleeding time little by little, and it ends up being 1 minute and 20 seconds slower in this split. That said, this is really back and forth. At Commander Mars, Shaymin Land was 9 seconds ahead. For Gardenia, it was 44 seconds ahead, and after Commander Jupiter, it was 15 seconds ahead. I can still see either of them taking the win. After all, there are some really difficult battles coming up, like Cyrus in the Distortion World, and Candice, who I am particularly worried about using Shaymin Sky. For now though, let's continue with Shaymin Land and battle Barry outside of the city. Starting in Generation 2, the AI starts making move choices based on how much damage it's going to deal, and it calculates this with a test damage roll. In some cases when you have higher defensive stats, it prompts the AI to set up more, and I think that's what's happening here with the Staravia. It's just spamming double team while I set up my Substitute and growths. We're going to notice in a little bit that it doesn't play this fight in the same way against Shaymin Sky. Either I'm getting lucky here or my defensive stats are once again helping. I get set up all the way to +5, I use Magical Leaf, bypassing accuracy checks, one-shotting the flying type. Next is Monferno, but it still goes down to a Magical Leaf, and as a result the rivals team is easy to finish off. The next section of the game is a great place to reflect on Shaymin Land's coverage. It only has grass and normal type moves. This leaves me with almost nothing against steel types. Ruin Maniac Calvin is really annoying to defeat. After him, a little bit further on the route, I have to face Dennis, and his team is also a little bit frustrating. Luckily, the Gligar gives me some time to set up, and then when the Drifblim comes in, I can finish it with Magical Leaf over 3 turns. Throughout the rest of the playthrough, you are going to hear me bemoan the fact that I don't have access to a ground type move, but even one of those wouldn't have helped here. And I guess that's just the downside of grass types. Typically, they don't have particularly good coverage. Luckily, no resets here. I make my way into Veilstone City, go into the gym, and then face Maylene. The thing I want you to pay attention to in this fight is my health. I get hit by a fake out, then do 25% damage to myself using substitute. Knowing the Lucario was going to resist my attacks with Magical Leaf, I wanted to take my time setting up here with Growth against the Metatite. It's trying to control my speed using Rock Tomb, and this stat is going to become relevant in the next gym battle, but for now I am faster than all of her Pokemon. If I want to maintain this advantage, I have to set up my substitute again when it breaks, cutting even more health. But when I lose it for a second time, I have +3 special attack, and I figured that this would be enough. I one-shot the Metatite and move on to the Lucario. Magical Leaf does more than half. It uses Force Palm, taking me down to 29 hit points, and luckily I have enough damage to knock it out on the next turn. That leaves only Machoke, but I'm faster and Magical Leaf does enough. The small amount of health that I'm left over with would not be the same if my defensive stats were lowered, which means I think Shaymin Sky is going to have more difficulties here, especially because it's weak to Rock Tomb. On my way to Pastoria City, I pass by the Aerial Ace TM, and this is where I want to make a brief aside to Shaymin Sky, because it can't learn this move, which I find really strange. Either way, once I arrive in the city, I pass through and grab a rare candy on the other side. Then in the Great Marsh, I pick up one more before going up against the rival outside of Crasher Wake's gym. The Staravia is still prioritizing Double Team. It sets up 3 times and then goes for Wing Attack, breaking my substitute. With +3 special attack, I figured this would be enough. Magical Leaf just barely doesn't one-shot, but the Staravia returns to setup, so I take it down for free. Then things get unlucky. I don't one-shot the Monferno, and I figured that this would be fine because I thought I would survive Flame Wheel, but Shaymin doesn't, in this case because of a critical hit. Okay, so coming back into the battle, when the Monferno does not get a crit, then I just knock it out over 2 turns. This time it just failed a Leer against my substitute, so that's also a possibility. Beyond that, the Roselia slows things down because Magical Leaf can't do much to it, but the Buizel's a one-hit. Inside the gym, let's go back to Shaymin's speed stat, which I mentioned during the Maylene fight. Here, when I level up from 38 to 39, it goes up from 96 to 98. This is of critical importance for Wake, who is next. His lead Gyarados doesn't have an Ice-type move, which is convenient for Shaymin Land because I can take my time setting up with Substitute and Growth. During this time I get hit by Bite over and over again, and while that happens, let's examine his speed stats. Gyarados has 64, Quagsire has 34, and Floatzel has 96. This is why the level up was very important. Because of the damage Bite is dealing, I have to re-establish my Substitute, and I figured that it wasn't worth setting up past +3. I'm gonna two-shot the Gyarados because it survives on a Sliver. Well, Wake uses a Hyper Potion, which is annoying, but it doesn't actually stop me from taking it out. Next he sends in Floatzel. I guess I leveled up here, so I was gonna outspeed it no matter what. Magical Leaf takes it out in one shot, and of course the Quagsire is a foregone conclusion. This gives Shaymin Land a Wake split of 55 minutes and 39 seconds. But we need to catch up with Shaymin Sky. Remember how I mentioned the Staravia doesn't perform the same way against it? Well, here you can see that because it's not just spamming Double Team, instead choosing to attack with Wing Attack occasionally. I was assuming it was just going to spam the setup move, so I was going for an all-out offensive strategy, trying to defeat all of his Pokemon. Remember, I played this run first, so I had less experience, and in the end the Monferno takes me out and I realize that I need to set up with Growth. But that's problematic because the Staravia isn't only setting up with Double Team, so it keeps breaking my substitute. While I managed to take out his lead, I wasn't able to set up due to the damage, and so the Monferno takes me out for a second time. Shaymin Sky is level 29 right now, which is just shy of a damage rounding threshold, so I think it makes sense to backtrack a little bit to level up to ensure that my damage gets an asymmetrical spike. I get lucky against the Staravia because my return hits 2 turns in a row, despite the fact that it's set up with Double Team. Also, I have sustained no damage before the Monferno comes in, giving me 3 turns to knock it out, surviving, although I only have orange health left over for the rest of the fight. That said, the Roselia isn't really a threat. It paralyzes me and starts using Poison Sting, but the Buizel can't do enough damage and Magical Leaf one-shots. In the next area of the game, Shaymin Sky's higher special attack is an advantage for it because Magical Leaf does a little bit more damage when the targets resist it. That said, the lower defensive stats are likely going to be an issue against Maylene, as I established before. First is Metatite, and I did not want it to use Rock Tomb because I'm weak to it, so instead I just choose Magical Leaf and one-shot. Next she sends in Machoke, which is different than in the previous fight due to the typing that Shaymin has. The Machoke is being selected because it has Rock Tomb, which is super effective. I wanted to continue attacking, but I am not able to knock it out in one hit with no growths. As a result, it hits with Rock Tomb, but it does less than a quarter. That said, it drops my speed to 69, which is not nice because now I'm not faster than the Lucario. Lucario. It goes for Metal Claw, getting a lucky critical hit, taking me to orange health, then I don't do very much with a resisted Magical Leaf, and now I'm really regretting not setting up. Lucario continues to attack, and Shaymin Sky just doesn't have enough health to pull through. I made a bit of a miscalculation here. I thought that Substitute wouldn't survive a Rock Tomb, but it will. That said, it won't survive too, so I have to set up multiple times if I want to continue my growth setup. But I'm able to get all the way to +3, and this should be enough. I'm left with red health, and after defeating the Meditite, the Shell Bell heals me to orange. Still, I'm not left with a lot, but I one-shot the Machoke as well, healing even more to around 1/3 health, and then the Lucario comes in. I need to two-shot this thing and survive its Metal Claw. Luckily for me, Shaymin has the damage required, and Lucario doesn't. I think if the Skyform's defensive stats were on par with the average or the median, I might have lost this battle, but that little legendary advantage is what I need to just barely pull through on my second attempt. With Maylene cleared, the way is now open for Skyform to start facing its greatest threats, the Pokemon that know Ice-type moves. The Rivals team before Crash or Wake doesn't have any, but that's not going to remain true throughout the rest of the playthrough. Even though my defensive stat is lower here, I just decided not to play around with Substitutes, setting up twice with Growth and then sweeping his team. The Monferno goes down to 2 hits, and once again it just goes for Leer, doing nothing. Now Crasherwick does have a Pokemon with Ice Fang, and I really wanted to make sure that I wasn't going to stumble here, so I used some rare candies, boosting Shaymin Sky up to level 45 before beginning the battle. I like to be as honest and transparent with you as possible. I think these rare candies were used because I had lack of experience. I don't think Shaymin Sky really needs them. It can set up on the Gyarados and then likely sweep with its higher speed and special attack. Shaymin Land didn't have a problem here, so Shaymin Sky shouldn't either. I was going into this fight blind, and I thought that the Gyarados might have an Ice-type move, but it doesn't, so I will have that fact memorized for future playthroughs on this channel. Either way, I'm able to get set up all the way to +5, and because of that, his team is an easy sweep, and I don't have to get hit by an Ice-type move just yet. With Wake defeated, I need to journey to Celestic Town, and Magical Leaf is very helpful here in the fog because I don't need to clear it. Instead, I have an advantage on my side, which is the enemy has a chance to miss and I don't. I'll take this time to address what I was thinking strategically about Shaymin Sky's moveset at this point in the playthrough. When I first sat down to film the run, I did consider Swords Dance because the move has been so overpowered in Pokemon Platinum up until this point. But with Skyform's high special attack, I really wanted to lean into that advantage and utilize Growth as its setup move. While this only increases my stat by 1 stage every time I use it, I'll at least get decent coverage running Magical Leaf, Air Slash, and Psychic. And that's about the best that Skyform can hope for, at least in the near future. Those moves are going to start being available very soon. I haven't invested in the Amulet coin to stockpile money to buy Psychic earlier on. Instead, I'll just get it once I get Rock Climb. In Celestic Town, I have to go up against Cyrus, and here is another case where he has an Ice-type move. The Sneasel knows Ice Punch. This move deals physical damage utilizing Sneasel's better stat. I am not able to knock out his lead in a single hit, and this is the first time I get hit for 4 times damage. Ice Punch does so much, but Shaymin Sky survives, and with 2 more returns after a healing item, I'm able to knock out Cyrus's lead. But I'm not through the fight yet because both Golbat and Murkrow have Flying-type moves. The Golbat has Air Cutter, which takes me down to red health, and the Murkrow has Drill Peck. That said, its HP and defensive stats are lower, and I was hoping for a one-shot, but I don't get it. This allows the bird to use Drill Peck, and Shaymin Sky faints. This is a bad omen for what's to come, because Cyrus is usually the most difficult trainer in Platinum in the Distortion world, and if I can't beat him here, then what's the chance that I'm going to be able to beat him there later on once he's more difficult? To this point in the playthrough, I have been skipping out on a lot of optional training, hoping that Shaymin's stats would be able to carry it, and I really thought they would because its special attack is outstanding. But for this battle I can't utilize it yet because my only special move is still Magical Leaf. This is just how limited its moveset is. I fly back to Veilstone City and I go to the game corner, but I don't have enough money to purchase Psychic, and it wouldn't be that useful against Cyrus anyway because 2 of his Pokemon are Dark types. That is another limitation of Shaymin's coverage. The only special moves it can hit Dark types with are Grass and Flying type, and Air Slash isn't available yet. From the game corner I can buy the Silk Scarf though, which increases the power of return by 20%. By doing this, I'm able to one-shot the Sneasel, dodging Ice Punch, and this way the rest of the battle is much easier. The Flying type moves just don't do enough. Completing this section of the game gives me access to Surf, and now I can use it to go to the northern part of Floroma Meadow and pick up the Miracle Seed. It increases the power of grass-type moves by 20%, which is great at this point in the game because Magical Leaf is really starting to fall off. And of course it's still my only special move, which is not a good thing to say when I have to fight the rival on the Canalave City Bridge. You might think that this is the battle where he's going to have his first Ice-type move because his Weasel has evolved into Floatzel, but this is not the case. There are no Ice-type moves in this battle. Instead, there is a Staraptor with Intimidate, lowering my attack stat, which means Return is going to deal a lot less damage. And unlike before, I can't really set up Growth here because its Aerial Aces are doing a lot. After one Growth, I try Magical Leaf, it doesn't one-shot, and as a result I'm taken to orange health before the Infernape comes in. Lack of a Flying type move is very painful here, but I do survive on 16 hit points. That said, I have no recovery moves and I'm running the Silk Scarf, so not even the Shell Bell can save me. The Roserade puts me to sleep, and this is revenge for all the times I've made fun of it in my previous playthroughs. I kept trying at this fight and things are not going well. The Staraptor can crit and then use Quick Attack to knock me out. Also, it can get a crit right away, dealing massive damage before I knock it out, and then the Infernape is able to get the win. I thought the Staraptor was never going to use Double Team here, but eventually it does in my 4th battle against him. This lets me knock it out for free, and then I can take on the Infernape, surviving the Flame Wheel easily. Because there's no Ice-type move waiting for me on the Floatzel, I can make my way slowly through the rest of his team members and emerge victorious. To this point in the video, I haven't talked about Byron once because we would expect that he would be trivial. What I've been finding in my Pokemon Platinum playthroughs is that the trainers inside the gym tend to be the real threats. I guess Byron's trying to leverage that principle of like, you're the average of like the 6 closest people around you. In this case, he really wishes he could live up to Ace Trainer Caesar's Scissor. This thing is brutal. X-Scissor does about 1/3 to me, then it uses Slash, taking me to half, and my Magical Leaf after 2 turns of setup is not even doing half. That's because it's doubly resisted by the bug's Steel type. While I am able to bring it down to red health, this is not enough for the victory, and Shaymin's Sky gets a reset. I tried again, and right out of the gate, the Scissor crits me with X-Scissor, doing more than half. So yeah, this is not going to work. I need to reevaluate my strategy. Because I am about to level up, I decide to exit the gym and backtrack to do a little bit more training. This way I can get to level 49, and then potentially use rare candies before Caesar if they're required. But I'm hoping it won't come to that, because I have one more moveset option that I haven't investigated or talked about up until this point. When I defeated Gardenia, I was given the TM for Grass Knot. This move has a variable power based on the target's weight. It ranges from 20 to 120, and I figured maybe this is going to be the solution against the Scissor if Magical Leaf isn't cutting it. Also, by this point in Platinum, Substitute has basically run its course. It's no longer a good utility move. So I'm going to teach Grass Knot in its place and try Caesar again. Right away, we can see that Grass Knot has almost double the power when compared with Magical Leaf. I decide to set up with Growth on turn 1, and then the Scissor crits me with X-Scissor again. This is so frustrating. I go for Grass Knot, it does more than half. Scissor uses Slash, and because of that, Grass Knot is able to defeat it on the next turn. I am so surprised I won that. I really didn't expect that it was possible after the Scissor got a critical hit. Still, I'm not yet through all the difficult trainers in the gym. There is still Ace Trainer Brianna, who has 3 Bronzor. With some Pokemon, they struggle against her, but in this case, Shaymin is capable, although I should have set up with Growth twice instead of just once because the 2nd and the 3rd Bronzor do survive hits, and they would have been one-shots, saving 1 turn in battle with an extra turn of setup. With her out of the way, it is time to now completely crush Byron. I think the best way to describe this fight is with The Empire Strikes Back. If you think about how Luke Skywalker used his ship with the cable to wrap up the feet of the AT-AT so that the giant metal thing would just sort of destroy itself after falling over, that is what happens here using Grass Knot against Byron's extremely heavy Pokemon. So that's an easy 6th badge, but like Luke Skywalker, I am now surrounded by snow, and this is really bad for Shaymin. There is no Han Solo to come and save me with some extremely strange methods, by the way. Did anyone ever think about how Luke breathes when he is pushed inside of this creature? That question always runs through my mind every time I see this scene. Seriously, if you have an actual answer, please let me know. After making it back to safety in Snowpoint City, I decided that I needed to do a little bit of training. Now, you might have noticed that the reset counter increased, so let's just go back in time for a moment and see what happened. I have started thinking that I'm going to skip the Commander battles in these Platinum playthroughs because they're usually quite boring, but this time against Commander Saturn, she poisons me with Toxic on the first turn, and I'm not able to do enough damage to one-shot the Toxicroak, plus her last Pokemon is Bronzor, so the damage from Toxic stacks up to the point where Shaymin Sky faints. But if she doesn't land Toxic, then the battle isn't a problem, so that's where the one reset came from. It's a little bit annoying. Anyways, let's continue with the run. I was honestly worried for Candice at level 53, so I decided to do some backtracking to train a little bit more. I'm doing this strategically so that I can get to level 55 as fast as possible. Then, with a total of 9 rare candies in my bag, I can use these to bring Shaymin up to level 64, where I can finally, at long last, learn Air Slash in the place of Grass Knot. I really hope that this is going to be enough for Candice. Her first Pokemon is Sneasel, and it knows Ice Shard, which is a priority move. Because of that, it moves first, but it's a weak move, so it only does a quarter. Now, I took my time here knowing that the Sneasel would not be able to one-shot or two-shot me, setting up Growth a single time. This increases the damage of Air Slash because it is a special move, and then I one-shot the Sneasel on the next turn. She chooses Frostlass next, which is actually good for me because if Piloswine and Abomasnow had come in first, then Snow Warning would have set up the Snow Cloak, but without it, I have less of a chance to miss, only a 5% chance. In this case, I hit and her ace goes down. From there, I have super effective damage against the Abomasnow, knocking it out in one turn, and all that's left is Piloswine. But yeah, this thing is really bad, so I'm gonna get a first attempt victory over Candice. I'm really glad I spent the extra time training to get Air Slash and didn't take a couple of resets here in a sloppy way. Shaymin Sky's Candice split is 1 hour 29 minutes and 59 seconds. If it didn't have problems against Candice, then Shaymin Land isn't going to either. So my assumption was that these Pokemon were going to stay fairly close together throughout the next section of the game. Cyrus in Celestic Town is much easier for Shaymin Land because ice moves don't deal 4 times damage, so if I 2-hit the Sneasel, it doesn't really matter. I also get a lucky critical hit against the Golbat, but that wouldn't have given me the victory. I still would have survived its Air Cutter plus the Murkrow's Drill Peck. Well, maybe. If the Golbat and Sneasel had both attacked, I probably would have lost this fight, but overall I still prefer Shaymin Land here. Plus, it did not need to backtrack to Veilstone City to buy the Silk Scarf. Berry and Canalave City is just difficult for both of these Pokemon. While the Staraptor is prioritizing more Double Team, once again likely due to my higher defensive stats, that's not the worst thing about this battle, because the Infernape comes in after the Heracross, meaning my health is lower. So Flame Wheel is able to hit me once my health is lower, and in this case it knocks me out. I tried teaching Grass Knot right away in the place of Substitute, seeing if I could get better damage with it in this fight, but I just am able to get set up with Magical Leaf all the way to +6. Still, this is not enough because I took too much damage and the Staraptor is able to end me with Quick Attack. Okay, so with Shaymin Land I haven't used any rare candies yet, and I'm going to use all 9 to boost it up to level 52. This really makes the Staraptor prioritize Double Team, it just uses it over and over again. By the time I'm at +5, I strike back with Magical Leaf, and I'm able to one-shot it, as well as the following Heracross, and then Infernape also goes down to a single hit. So this battle is made simple just by using some rare candies. Another advantage of this is that I have a higher level for Ace Trainer Caesar. I'm also using Grass Knot by this point, so I take a first attempt victory over him. Remember, Caesar is the most difficult trainer in the gym, and Byron is once again a pushover. I think it's important to compare the splits now. At the rival on the bridge, Shaymin Land was 18 seconds ahead. If we look back throughout all the previous splits, you can see that the times have been very close throughout this run, bouncing back and forth between both Pokemon. However, after Byron, Shaymin Land has taken a 2-minute and 31-second lead. So far in these playthroughs, this is the largest gap between the two forms. And I think it really comes down to the fact that Shaymin Land was just a little bit better suited to face Ace Trainer Caesar, plus I had a little bit more experience knowing that I should be using Grass Knot. From here though, Shaymin Land doesn't have as many threats when compared with the Sky form. It also gets lucky in the battle against Commander Saturn not having a reset. But then to balance things out against Commander Mars, I get hit by Toxic and lose in the same way that Sky lost against Saturn. Also, here I realized that the graphic is showing up in the wrong place. This is filmed into the footage with my overlay, so I can't change it in post, which is a nuisance, but it's not going to annoy us for long because I defeat her on my next attempt. Now, right before I reach the blizzarding area, there is Ace Trainer Dalton, and he is going to get art at some point in the future. I have already commissioned it because his team of Electabuzz and Magmar are a serious threat for some Pokemon. If you can't one-hit, the Electabuzz can paralyze you, and the Magmar can inflict a burn with Will-O-Wisp or Flamethrower. In today's run with Shaymin, things get very close. Because of paralysis, I am brought down to red health before I take out the Magmar. The real unfortunate thing here is that I didn't go back and heal in the cabin just before this area, instead pushing on ahead. This is definitely a mistake because then there's Ace Trainer Olivia at the end of the area, and her Banuri knows quick attack, so it's able to knock out Shaymin, giving me a reset. I really didn't want to waste time backtracking, so instead I used rare candies going up to level 59. Every time you level up you gain more health, and I figured that that would be just enough to survive the quick attack, and in this case I'm right because the AI doesn't choose to use the priority move, seeing that it won't knock me out. As a result, I defeat Ace Trainer Olivia and earn the right to face Candice. Right away we can see the major differences between these two forms. With only a single weakness to ice moves, Ice Shard is dealing pathetic damage. That's also because of my higher defensive stats. I take my time setting up with growth as much as I felt comfortable, and by the time I reached +4, I wasn't sure how many more hits I could take, and it's really lucky that I decided to attack now because the Sneasel gets a critical hit, bringing Shaymin down to red health. I was left a bit worried because she still has 3 Pokemon, and I'm not sure if I'm going to one-hit all of them with only +4. Granted, I am a legendary and my stats are pretty good, but my level is lower than it was with Shaymin Sky, and I don't have access to a flying type move. I have to use Magical Leaf against the Frostlass, I can't miss, and I do enough damage. Next, she sends in Piloswine, which is generally bad, and Magical Leaf is super effective, so I one-shot. I should have used Grass Knot there, I just wasn't paying attention. Last is Abomasnow. Now it resists my attacks. Luckily for me, I remembered that Grass Knot existed while watching the Piloswine's health deplete, so I use it here for more damage, and Shaymin is able to do it on its first attempt. I'm really happy that neither of these grass types had resets to Candice. That feels really good. But the perplexing thing from this result is the time. Shaymin Land defeats Candice at 1 hour 23 minutes and 25 seconds. It is now 6 minutes and 34 seconds ahead of Shaymin Sky. You might be wondering what's happening here. Well, I think the explanation is fairly simple. With Shaymin Sky's 4 times weakness to ice type moves, I felt the need to use rare candies before Wake, and I was also compelled to do extra training before Candice to get access to Air Slash. All of this said, I'm not sure that Shaymin Land is going to be able to maintain this advantage throughout the late game because its type coverage is more limited. With Candice cleared, I can use Rock Climb outside of battle, and this finally allows me to scale this wall outside of Celestic Town to pick up the TM for Psychic. I mentioned before that I had considered using Swords Dance on Shaymin Land just so that I could use a physical set, but I think the run would bleed more time getting Zen Headbutt or the Move Tutor rather than just waiting for Psychic. After all, it hasn't really been needed until this point. And it doesn't even help me in the next major battle, which is against Cyrus. This one is a bit trickier than the first one for Shaymin Land because the Sneasel has Screech so it can lower my defense, and then Ice Punch is actually doing a lot of damage. Plus, the Crobat is quite fast, but Shaymin Land still is faster than it. It's actually faster than every other enemy Pokemon in the game by this point. So I could see myself using a speed-lowering nature on this thing to squeeze out a little bit more special attack. But that would have been a bad choice in this case because then the Crobat plus the Haunch Crow would have knocked me out, but that's what happens anyways because Drill Peck does massive damage. The next fight just goes much better. I get set up to +3 and I have -4 defense, but that doesn't matter when I'm outspeeding. Psychic one-shots the Crobat, and then against the Haunch Crow I can use Magical Leaf and get the one-hit. The battle at the top of Mount Coronet against the Commanders is kind of annoying because this graphic is once again doing all of the wrong things. Luckily for Shaymin Land, with growth it has no problems here, and that allows me to pass into the distortion world. Okay, so I have been setting this up throughout the entire video and throughout the entire series. Cyrus is, in his final battle, by far the best enemy leader in all the main series Pokemon games up until Generation 4. I think my mind might be changed by Getsis later on in Generation 5, but I'll only know once I get there. So will Cyrus be difficult for Shaymin Land? And the answer is, yes, he starts with a Houndoom, the Pokemon that I have no answer for. I lack a ground type move because, like I said before, Earth Power is late game, and I can't really set up because Will-O-Wisp and Flamethrower are both potent moves for it to use. I could block the former of these with Substitute, but that's just a gamble because then the latter would just break my defense right away and I would have wasted a turn. In my initial battle against him, I don't even beat his first Pokemon before I take a reset. I decided that rare candies were basically required, so I level up to 64 and have the chance to learn Aromatherapy. I didn't know how this move worked, so I looked it up, and what it does is it cures the user and all of the party of status conditions. conditions. That includes burn, so if I teach it in the place of grass knot, then I can get rid of the burn from Will-O-Wisp and hopefully make it through the later stages of the fight with some degree of setup. I set up to +1 with growth and get burned, then I use Magical Leaf to 2-hit the Houndoom and move on to Cyrus's next Pokemon. I get lucky here because he's not sending in Gyarados or Weavile next because he sees that Crobat has a super effective move in the form of Air Slash. I'm also not sure why he decided to skip by his Honchkrow because it does have Drill Peck. If you know, let me know in the comments. I'm always trying to learn more about these games and you have helped me so much up until this point. Go back and watch my early videos if you want to see just how far I've come. I can use Aromatherapy to heal my burn, but then Cross Poison is doing a lot of damage, and while Psychic is able to knock out the Crobat, from here I don't have enough damage to manage the Honchkrow, and that's another reset. I have 2 more resets attempting this battle, and things are just not going very well. I felt like I needed to get to +2, but it just doesn't really seem feasible for Shaymin to pull that off. I use my remaining 3 rare candies to go up to level 67, which is only over 1 more damage rounding threshold, so it's not helping out that much. Although it does increase my defensive stats, and hopefully it'll give me a little bit more HP for the rest of the battle. That isn't the only way for Shaymin Land to win though, because Houndoom can miss with Will-O-Wisp. It only has 85% accuracy. If that happens, then I will be able to get to +2, but in this case I just kind of forgot and didn't take it. I decided to knock it out with only +1, hoping that then I would have enough health to survive the Honchkrow. But this is fatal logic because while I do survive the Honchkrow, then I have to go up against the Weavile and the Gyarados. He chooses his ace next, and Magical Leaf surprisingly has enough damage to defeat it. And that leads to the Gyarados. Okay, I actually might be able to do this. I go for Magical Leaf, but because it has the flying type, it survives on red health, uses Ice Fang, gets a critical hit just for good measure, and Shaymin goes down. Okay, as expected, this is the most difficult battle in the playthrough, and I have so many resets. Now, you might be wondering, why not just backtrack, level up a little bit more, make things easier on yourself, and then only have to use 1 growth? Or bring Substitute in and then hopefully dodge Will-O-Wisp, get a little bit lucky early into the battle and win that way. Yes, I could have done those things, but to do that I would have to backtrack through the entire Distortion world, which would take a significant time investment. Plus, then I would also need to return into the Distortion world, and that is not a quick process. Because of this, I decided to put my head down and just grind through the resets until I get the opening that I need. And it comes in the form of a very strange switch out from Cyrus, where he puts in his Honchkrow, tanks a Magical Leaf, and then I just knock it out. This is the first time I've seen this behavior. I'm not sure why, but I would guess that he's trying to send in a Pokemon that resists the move that I'm attacking with, although that doesn't make a lot of sense because the Houndoom already resists it. Either way, this gives me the opening I need to move on to the Crobat, one-shot with Psychic. Then from there I finish the Houndoom as well as the Weavile using Magical Leaf, and now with +2 I can one-shot the Gyarados. Shaymin Land comes out of this battle bruised, accumulating 13 resets for a playthrough total of 20. From here though, things get a little bit easier. Volkner is the next gym leader and I sweep through his team with minimal effort because he's just generally quite bad in Platinum solo runs. After that I have to mention the Blissey and Victory Road. This thing always takes a while to knock out, especially when I only have special moves. Luckily for me I have growth, so it doesn't take too many hits to knock out. After clearing Victory Road I use 2 additional rare candies, leveling up to 74, but before that I am level 73 and I get the chance to learn Energy Ball. At long last I have a decent replacement for Magical Leaf. With it, let's face the rival one last time. This is the first time he has an Ice type move. It's on his Floatzel, which is technically second, but I have to beat the Staraptor first. And up until this point, Shaymin Land has been relying on its use of Double Team, but in this fight it doesn't know the move, so it's just gonna spam Aerial Ace, doing about a third with each hit. Due to that, I can only set up growth twice before I have to attack. Here though, I have neutral Psychic, which does enough to knock out the Flying type. I can continue using this move against the Heracross, it's super effective, getting the 1 hit, and then he sends in Infernape. Psychic covers this, as well as the following Roserade, leading to the Floatzel with Ice Fang. But it's a water type, so Energy Ball does the trick. Last is Snorlax, and in ordinary circumstances this might be a little bit intimidating. It has good special defense, but with setup and Energy Ball, I'm able to one-shot. After setup, his team was a clean sweep, and Ice Fang was not an issue. Shaymin Sky doesn't struggle against Cyrus because it can set up, and even with Toxic on the field, it doesn't matter. It gets its revenge against Saturn, and then I pick up the TM for Psychic, which I teach in the place of Return, finally converting my set to all special moves. The double battle at the top of Mount Coronet is straightforward, and then I go up against Cyrus in the Distortion world. I think it's key to note that Shaymin Sky is the same level that Land was after using rare candies for this fight. The main difference here is my typing and the fact that my move coverage is much more diverse. I have Air Slash for the Houndoom, so after one turn of setup, I can just one-shot it. Then, because of my typing, he chooses his Pokemon in a different order, this time sending out Weavile next. It's an easy one-shot, Crobat comes in, it falls to Psychic, then Honchkrow comes in, but Air Slash is neutral, one-shotting again. That leaves only Gyarados. Now, note here that Magical Leaf does less damage than Air Slash because its base power is just low. I thought that I would have enough damage, but in this case, I'm not going to, so Gyarados will have a chance to use Ice Fang, unless I just get a flinch because of Serene Grace, and so I'm able to take a victory over Cyrus on my first attempt. We've had a little bit of a trend where trainers that are difficult in one run are easy in another run, and yeah, that trend continues because Volkner defeats me. This is exclusively because I'm a flying type and I'm trying to set up. I tried the fight twice and both result in a loss when I'm setting up on the first turn, so I decided to backtrack, do a little bit more leveling, get to 70 and use 3 rare candies to get to 73 so that I can have Energy Ball for this battle. This way I don't need turn 1 setup, instead I can just use the grass type move right away, one-shot the Jolteon, the Luxray, the Electivire, as well as the Raichu, getting a clean sweep over Volkner. I have to say, the losses there were a little bit painful, but they're not the end of the world. I still have 5 less resets when compared with Shaymin Land. There's one more battle against the rival before the league, but my diverse type coverage here and my higher special attack makes things much easier. I sweep through his Pokemon, and with that, we are ready for the Elite Four. Aaron is the first member. His bug types are weak to Air Slash after a single growth. I just start my sweep. It's a little bit annoying here because of double team, I miss a bit, but eventually I start hitting, and from there I one-hit the Yanmega, the Vespiquen, the Drapion, and the Heracross. But the Scizor is probably going to survive a hit. That said, it's not able to do enough damage, and Air Slash is actually able to take it out. While it isn't super effective, it was at least dealing neutral damage. Next is Bertha. Notably, her Gliscor does have Ice Fang, which is a physical move and deals Ice-type damage. I was a little bit worried about it because it's a tanky Pokemon, and its flying type means that it takes neutral damage from Energy Ball, but with one turn of setup with Growth, I still one-hit. The Golem, Rhyperior, and Hippowdon are easy to manage after that. Okay, time for Flint. Typically, he's the worst member of the league. I would say he's comparable with Bruno, maybe Bruno in Generation 2. Sometimes he does stuff, and in this case he does because the Rapidash gets a critical hit with Flare Blitz, knocking Shaymin Sky out. I think that was a bit of luck and a bit of player mistake. I could just set up at the beginning of the fight on the Houndoom and then sweep his team, but instead I was trying to knock out his first Pokemon so that I wouldn't get hit by an Overheat or a Sun-boosted move. I take a victory in the next battle after just setting up on the first turn. The last member of the Elite Four is Lucian. He is honestly one of the most pathetic trainers ever. I genuinely cannot think of a Pokemon that will struggle against him. The only reason is maybe the Bronzong takes too long to knock out and you're weak to Psychic moves. In this case though, Shaymin has no problems. I use 2 rare candies to go up to level 80, and now it is time for Cynthia. The flaw of her team when she's trying to stop a solo run is the fact that the Spiritomb is very defensive, giving you time to set up. Then beyond that, if you have enough speed, which Shaymin Sky clearly does, I am just going to be able to sweep. I one-hit the Togekiss, the Roserade, the Lucario, the Milotic, and make it all the way to her final Pokemon, Garchomp. It doesn't know an Ice-type move, but it does have Flamethrower. That said, with +4, Energy Ball is more than enough. Shaymin Sky clocks in with a time of 2 hours, 14 minutes, and 4 seconds, with 16 resets, 0 blackouts at level 80, with a game time of 6 hours and 46 minutes. Just quickly before we go back and see how Shaymin Land does with the league, I want to mention the rival split before the league started. Shaymin Sky had a time of 2 hours, 8 minutes, and 40 seconds. It is only 46 seconds ahead of Shaymin Land, so the close run that we had at the very start has continued all the way until this point. Everything is going to be decided by the trainers that come next. Okay, so Shaymin Land against Aaron is a little bit of a weird case. Because my special attack is lower and I lack a flying type move, I'm not able to one-hit all of the Pokemon. Like for example, the Vespiquen survives a hit from Psychic and does some damage, then Scizor comes out and I don't have a flying type move. Also, the Steel type resists the Psychic type and the Bug type is super effective against me, so with X-Scissor, it is able to knock Shaymin Land out. In the next battle I tried to set up more, but this can be a slippery slope because the Yanmega can deal a lot lot of damage with Bug Buzz. It has speed boost, so it's getting faster every turn, and it also can sometimes choose double team. I have 2 hit points remaining because it attacked a lot, and so the rest of the battle is not going to be possible if I can't one hit. Well, it's actually not going to be possible because of the scissor again, because it has quick attack. Okay, I did not expect this to be the wall. In the next battle, the Yanmega just sets up too many double teams and I have another loss. Finally, I realized what I should be doing. I can set up a little bit against the Yanmega so that I one-shot it, but the Vespiquen isn't very offensive. After all, I just played it. Here I can take my time to set up a little bit more if I want. I go to +3, I'm getting low on health, and then I need to knock it out so that I can survive the Scissors X Scissor and knock it out over 2 turns with Psychic. From there, I continue my spree against the Heracross, but Drapion was a bit of a concern. It resists Energy Ball, but I have to use this move because it's a Dark type and Psychic does nothing. That said, Energy Ball does enough damage, so finally I have defeated Aaron. I do think this is the first time he has ever been a significant challenge in one of these playthroughs. Luckily for me, Bertha is a pushover because Energy Ball just sweeps her team, but Flint once again causes more problems for Shaymin. Because I don't have access to good coverage, Air Slash was really important here. I am now having to use Psychic to knock out his Pokemon, which does much less damage. I make it to the Infernape, but I have too little health and it knocks me out. I thought I had a solution which was going to +2, but I'm still not able to one-hit the Magmortar, giving it an opportunity to give me a second reset. The solution to this fight is getting +3. I'm going to go +2 on the Houndoom, knock it out, and the Flareon, and then I'm able to sweep through his final Pokemon. Although the delays here against Aaron and Flint have taken away Shaymin Land's chance to win. Still, Lucian is a pushover, and against Cynthia, I can get set up so much that the remaining Pokemon on her team are not an issue. Shaymin Land clocks in with a time of 2 hours, 17 minutes, and 55 seconds, with 25 resets, 0 blackouts at level 77, with a game time of 6 hours and 21 minutes. Okay, before we rank these Pokemon in the tier list, I just want to say thank you to everyone who supports me on Patreon or through YouTube memberships. You allow me to keep the quality of these videos very high and make this my full-time job. I really appreciate it. Okay, let's talk about these 2 results because I think they're extremely interesting. Shaymin Sky got a faster real time largely because it was able to set itself apart using Air Slash. This really helped against Aaron, and I think that was the decisive fight of the run, something I thought I would never say. Although if we look at game time, Shaymin Land was able to win in that metric. If you're curious why these are different or not exactly the same, the reason is I play on 4 times game speed to make these videos a little bit easier to produce and also more fun for me. Playing Pokemon on 1 times game speed as an adult is just not feasible and also not fun. This leads to some discrepancies. These 2 metrics are also fundamentally different and I like measuring them independently, and I would also do it even if I played on 1 times game speed. The reason is whenever you reset, the game time reverts back to what it was at the last time you saved. Essentially what this means, if you have a really tough battle and you reset, say, 13 times, even though you're resetting a lot and the real time is incrementing, the game time isn't, keeping this metric artificially low. What this means is the lowest possible game time is always achievable by the riskiest, most luck-reliant strategies. So what happened here is that Shaymin Land resets so many times against Cyrus in the Distortion world, bloating its real time, reducing its game time, whereas Shaymin Sky solved problems by doing additional training before Candice, and then had less overall resets, which bloated its game time. I think looking at these 2 Pokemon, it should be clear to everyone that Shaymin Sky is just superior from a solo running perspective, although I still think that Shaymin Land has a lot of advantages. Right now my Pokemon Platinum tier list is strictly first playthroughs, so it feels a little bit weird to rank both of them, but I am going to do it just for data comparison's sake. That said, both of these Pokemon stomped the game. Today, Shaymin Sky takes the first place spot, beating out Giratina's former result. And Shaymin Land, while not as good as Shaymin Sky, it was still better than Giratina, earning itself the 2nd place spot. You might be left feeling a little bit unsatisfied by this because both of the runs were quite easy. So if you want to see a grass type really struggle with the game and also me make a major player blunder, check out this video where I solo run the game with the Torterra line. Now, if you've made it this far, you're incredible. I'll see you in my next video.